Oh,
We don't
dear.
have enough board members.
Okay, so we need to get pieces of paper that we hand out to all of them. They need to write down the nominee of their choice. We need to count them and then announce.
We didn't always follow the rules exactly.
Bring a pen.
Our full committee? Just no. Last time I looked at it.
Thanks, love. We pass them in?
Yeah, you can pass them down.
Pass them on down the line? Pencil sharpener.
Nope, one more.
Oops. Did it?
Okay. Okay, now let me see what we have to do. Okay, if there's a tie, another ballot is taken in the same manner. This could go on, perhaps. Okay.
Oh, do we get to know what the tie is? But so we now
It's
do it,
obviously 3-3, but
do
Yeah.
you do it between, what I'm asking is, do you
either one or
Do you
the other.
say who's the tie with, and then we just tally up for those two?
I'm sorry, I guess I'm confused. on what you're saying.
Okay, so.
The
if we-
ties between Brian Miller and Fred Sweeney?
Oh, yeah, okay, so that's what I.
Yes, sorry.
There we go. Vote for yourself.
The vote is unanimous. No, it's not.
Fraud. Fraud.
Come on, you can do it. You don't want to. I already handed them over.
Okay, so I guess
See how loved you both are?
and it's the same. There's a clear vote in favor, someone may be able to make a motion for election by acclamation.
Here's two more over here.
So it's the same again. Okay, so it says, if there's not a clear vote, it was a tie again between Brian Miller and Fred Sweeney. It says if there's not a clear vote in favor, someone may try to take a motion for an election by acclamation. This is an acceptable way to get a unanimous ballot without via votes. The motion must be made, seconded, and carried by a majority to be valid.
All right, I'll make a motion.
Do you want to trade?
I don't know, how do you feel about it?
It's up to you.
Oh, jeez.
I don't care.
I like it.
So,
doesn't really
say that
say.
again? So someone just puts it out there?
So it says, if there is not a clear vote in favor, someone may try to make a motion for an election by acclamation. This is an acceptable way to get a unanimous ballot without the via voce. The motion must be made, seconded, and carried by a majority to be valid.
I'll say I took on the nomination because I thought maybe you could use a break, but if you want to continue, I'd be happy
up to
to
you.
withdraw it.
So I'd like to make a motion that Fred be the chair and Brian be the second.
We're
Vice
just
chair.
doing the chair election now. We'll do the vice chair election after. So
That's
you
fine
can,
with me.
if you can revise your motion only for the chair.
For chair, I'd like to make a motion for Fred Sweeney to be the chair of the board for the
Okay.
next term.
Do we have a second to the motion?
You spoke up first.
Okay. All in favor, vote by signify. Sorry, what is it?
Aye.
Aye. Say aye in favor.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Any abstentions?
No.
No. Okay. Thank you. All right.
Congratulations, Trump.
Okay, now we're going to do the same thing for vice chair. Is there any nominations for the vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Brian
Okay.
Miller for vice chair.
I'll second it.
Any other nominations? Okay, all those in favor of electing Brian Miller as vice chair, please say aye.
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 Any abstentions, oppositions? No.
Well done.
All right, congratulations
Status
to the new chair and vice chair. Thank
One
you.
ways to keep it the same. All right.
I think it works well. It works. It's working.
Mr. Sweeney, you can take over.
Okay, so we're now at a point in the meeting, if there's anyone in the audience that wishes to address the board on an item not on today's agenda, they can come forward now. Mr. Jacobs.
Actually, we're going to take that during announcements.
Oh, we're going to do that during announcement? Okay. Anyone else?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I was wondering if there is a question of whether the board would like to form an AUD subcommittee, and we already have our NZO subcommittee. So that was a question that you guys had a choice of whether to add a subcommittee.
Okay,
So if
An
you'd like
average
to,
unit density
Yeah.
subcommittee.
right. Does anyone,
I would do that with,
I'd be on
but let me clarify, does any AUD become before this board?
no, however, in some cases, there's AUD projects that are built next to single-family design homes, so I don't know if there would be an interest for
Okay.
this board to come up with some sort of compatibility guidelines, or if you'd like to work with the AUD members
Okay.
on certain projects that do come in contact with
So
us.
do you all understand what's going on? In other words, we
Oh.
don't see AUD projects,
But if they affect single-family
but they might
design
affect.
issues,
right.
then
So if you
We're there
two
to
want to
make-
do that,
Listed
that
on
would be
the
perfectly
NZO
fine.
committee, I wonder. I do.
Okay?
So is there any other board member appointees, or just,
Just the two of you?
I'd be
Brian?
interested.
Okay. And then maybe among the three of you, you can elect a chair?
Okay.
Okay. I mean,
I
somebody that you're
nominate
supposed to.
Brian.
Second. There you go. Brian's chair.
All right, so that's our subcommittee. And based on my understanding, you'll meet as necessary and report back to the board as appropriate?
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good.
Okay,
thank you.
okay,
I'm not
thank
listed
you.
on the NZO side.
Any other public comment? Did I already close public comment? I thought I did. Okay. Then we go to announcements, and then I'll go back to Katie.
Okay, Mr. Chair, we have an announcement for 113 La Plata. This is going to be up for review by the board. It's not on the agenda. If you could comment on the acceptability of the proposed handrail materials, you can come forward.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi. And it was my understanding that it was a consent experience?
They're just commenting on the acceptability for staff, and then staff will take action on the item.
Okay.
Okay.
This is a house just about completed that you guys approved. Thank you so much. The very minor changes are the front door was red on the permit drawings, and the garage door was white. They decided they would prefer a white front door and a colored garage that matches the body color.
Okay.
And the other minor change was that we had a cable railing. It had wood posts, and after discussion with the contractor, it was recommended that the posts become stainless steel. We've still got the wood cap and the wood low wall cap. Otherwise, it's
And the
cable railing.
That's the color that's being proposed, or are these going to go to white?
They're stainless steel. So,
These horizontals?
oh yes, they're stained. Yeah.
They're stained, so that's the color
Yes,
they're going
yes,
to be?
right.
Okay.
So that's all commemorated in this documentation. Oh, and we also, the contractor placed an outdoor shower fixture, and we need your approval for that, apparently.
Okay. Do we have questions?
I have a question. Where is the shower located?
And this, actually, it's adjacent to the trash area. It's in the side yard.
Side yard?
Which
It's
side?
screened.
We're looking at the front,
Side.
It's on that
And
side.
it's heavily screened.
Okay.
so it's back of the
Existing
garage.
vegetation. Yes, back of the garage.
Okay.
Here is the floor plan. This is coming out of, here's the garage, here's the back hall. There's,
Okay. Other questions? Yes.
Again, why was the post replaced with the steel?
It's very difficult to waterproof a wall cap like that with a 4x4 on it, and there's living area below. It's a living room. And so out of prudence and maintenance concerns, the stainless steel solid post was proposed and done.
And you're planning on leaving
So
the...
this is the stainless steel piece.
Yes.
And then if you look carefully at this photograph,
Yeah,
you'll
they're
see that
kind of in the middle.
the horizontal cable rails are here, and then there is a wood cap on top of the little wall here. and
Yeah, I
there's
see
a
it.
wood cap there.
Yeah, I see it out of, yeah.
Okay, other questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair, so this picture that we have, is this what you're proposing? This is the actual
That
color
is
and...
living color.
Because I wonder if it would be painted to more closely match the colors of the house.
Well, it was a trim decision that the owner had input on, and that was something that they felt strongly about. And when one has an owner with a strong feeling, one usually says yes.
So they bring it to the board
Then they
for
bring
review.
it for-
So this is our purview. If we don't like the color,
Staff
we
is
can-
looking for comments, so if you don't find the proposed colors acceptable, if you could
I would
provide
rather
some
have it
direction.
Same color.
Painted, but the,
All right, so are there other questions before we go to comments? Okay, if not, let's go to comments and the comments go to staff, so.
Okay.
I think it's left, if it's left, my comment is, if it's left as color, it looks like it's unfinished and was just added.
Right, it's not
The
part
whole
of the house.
The whole house is.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, the rest of the design is integral, and that looks like, yeah, either unfinished or a mistake.
So I think that what I hear people saying is that the rail either needs to go white to match the trim,
Yeah.
or it could go to a darker version of the body color. Is that-
and I
would that be
think we
acceptable?
also are saying that other two changes, the door color and the garage door color, meet our guidelines.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the horizontal, the verticals are fine as steel elements, correct?
Yes.
Okay, is that enough for staff? Okay,
And you're
and
fine
then, yeah,
with it.
and the shower is okay. Nobody has objection to the shower. Okay,
Thank you.
okay,
Thank you very much.
okay. Other announcements, Katie?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I have just one, and I forgot to make copies, so I'm going to pass this around at your leisure. You can look at this. As you recall, the NZO subcommittee met. We were requested by city staff to give a little bit more detail on our preference to use some guidelines in terms of the trash enclosures that under the NZO change would be allowed in a setback. So we did a little drawing based on the narrowest setback that's probably going to be incurred in a single-family residence, and that's 6 foot. So after some discussion with the subcommittee, we came up with this little sketch, and that was forwarded to Dan Cato at the city, and we haven't had a response back. So we assume they're either looking at it or accepting it or not accepting it. We don't know yet. So I'll pass that around for everybody's review. Okay, anything else? Katie?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I did see this, yeah, I think it was on our email.
It was on an email, but I
Yeah,
just
it's
want
on
to
an
make
email.
sure you all saw it. Okay. Okay, let's go then to approval of meeting minutes. Let's go to the last meeting of the board, which was on January 23rd, 2017. Do I have a motion for approval?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay. Let's go through the items that we reviewed. Item number 2, 626 Sunrise Vista Way. Comments or corrections? Item number 3, 333 El Cielito Road. Item number 4, 216 Vista Del Mar Drive. Item number 5, 1201 Del Oro. Item number 6, 2439 Santa Barbara Street. Item number 7, 940 Alston Road. Item 8, 430 Conejo Road. Hearing no further comments, the chair will call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So carried. Let's go to the consent calendar for January 30th. Katie.
The minutes for the January 30th consent meeting are as follows. Item A, 1366 Sycamore Canyon Road, receive final approval as submitted, of review after final changes. Item B, 3635 Campanile Drive, receive final approval as submitted, of review after final changes. Item C, 1509 Eucalyptus Hill Road, was continued 1 week to consent with comments that the board finds the proposed fence/wall to be obtrusive, to provide a landscape plan and reconsider the paint color. Item D, 1970 Mission Ridge Road, receive project design approval and final approval as submitted with NPO findings. Item E, 1115 Varela Road, receive project design approval and final approval with NPO findings. And item F, 712 Calle Aiea, receive project design approval and final approval with NPO findings.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments?
John,
Before I do that, we do need a motion for approval.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, now, yes, Joe.
item C came before us. It's, to me, it's a very controversial project. If it comes in front of me again, I'll reject it.
Okay.
You might want to look at it.
Well, it's your decision. You guys are the consent, but if you're uncomfortable, I know in the past I've taken the position that if I'm really uncomfortable, I don't really want to take a unilateral decision and tell the people, sorry, Charlie, can't do it. I generally request staff bump it up to here.
All right.
So I'll leave it up to you guys.
Next go around, after I look at it, we'll make a decision.
That's kind of,
Okay.
your guys'
Or a member
decision.
of the board can request that it be bumped up.
Can they, is that allowed? I'm getting a yes.
Yeah,
No?
the consent reviewers can request that it be reviewed at full board.
But can anybody that's not the consent reviewer ask for something to come forward?
I don't believe so. It's only the reviewers.
Okay, so
But
the reviewers
you
need to make
can,
that
Joe.
decision. Okay.
You can just request it.
Okay, well, we'll leave it up to you guys.
It's been, it was postponed today. Can
They
we,
postponed again. It's actually been postponed till the 21st.
oh, it has again. Okay, well then why don't we just, can we inform him that, I guess we can't, that we're going to bump
Continue
it?
to consent. I'd have to ask staff if we would be allowed to redirect the applicant to full board, since the motion stated it.
No, you
returned
said coming
consent.
back to consent and then telling him that he has to come back to full board. If we can inform him now.
I'll have to discuss that with staff.
Save them a step.
Yeah.
Okay,
But isn't that the process that we've always used, is the consent board member can
Yes.
send?
Right.
so
I'm
that's what
only
it's
saying
doing.
because the
But
motion.
they-
but
didn't
they
do
didn't
that.
do it at the formal meeting
Because I
on the
hadn't
28th.
seen it yet.
Yeah.
I hadn't gone.
She hadn't seen it yet. So I think you have to give it the
Yeah.
opportunity, and Katie can confer with staff to determine the exact
Yeah, that would be-
process.
That would be
See it at consent first.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And-
I'll
because
weigh
you
in.
can't be unfair to the applicant on the hand that you have made a prejudgment without them being present, so you probably have to be a little careful.
Okay.
So we'll leave
That's what I was
leave it up to staff's guidance. Okay, any further discussion on the motion to the consent calendar for January 30th? Hearing none, let's take a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions, so carried. Let's go to this morning, February 6th. Katie?
The minutes for February 6th consent meeting are as follows. Item A, 1721 Law Coordinated Drive, received final approval as submitted of review after final changes. Item B was continued indefinitely at the applicant's request. Item C, 3844 Lincoln Road, received project design approval and final approval with the NPO findings. And item D, 731 Las Canoas Place, received project design approval and final approval with the NPO findings. And the condition that the Tier 3 stormwater management program requirements must be met prior to building permit submittal.
Okay, thank you. So do I have a motion for approval?
I'll make that motion.
All in, second? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions, so carried. Okay. And I think we're at clearing everything else. No other announcements, huh, Katie?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then let's go to item number 242 Los Alturas Road. This is a project that was last reviewed on December 12th, 2016, and it must comply with Staff Hearing Officer Resolution Number 003-17. Action may be taken if sufficient information is provided.
I know.
All right,
This is a big crap
a
chair.
little bit of paperwork here.
Might as well get a new badge when I'm
Oh, God. This should be a way to cinch that.
Okay, so if you could introduce yourselves, please.
Hi, my name is Damian Forte with Studio William Hefner, architect for the project.
My name's Leila Boyce. I'm a job captain at Studio William Hefner.
Robert McGlashan, homeowner.
Okay, welcome. Mr. Miller, if you could read our last comments, please.
Okay, I believe, is it this list right here?
December 12th.
Okay, December 12th. Final approval is requested. Project was last reviewed November 28th. Final approval was submitted on the, there's minutes, there's several items on item 28. So,
Right, you need to read those.
those, okay. Number one, the board had positive comments regarding the project's consistency and appearance, neighborhood compatibility, quality of architecture.
Oh, wait a minute, hold on, excuse me, I'm sorry. Just the December 12th. December 12th comments, so let's go back.
Yeah, there's,
Oops.
If I can make an announcement, this project was phased into two parts, if you don't
Right.
recall. So the first part of the project received final approval. They're coming back today for the second phase of the project.
Oh,
So-
okay, that's what's confusing us, because we
Yes.
gave it final approval
Right.
on the 12th. So now we're here for the second phase.
The second phase of the project, which will need PDA and final and all
Okay,
of that.
but did they go to the staff hearing officer?
Yes.
And get it approved? Okay, so you're going to share with us what the staff hearing officer allowed?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, now we're clear. We were confused, I'm sorry.
No worries.
Go ahead.
So was I when I read the description.
That's in place. Okay, just to jog everybody's memory, December 12th, we came in for Phase 1 and received approval to move forward with that. We had separated out Phase 2, which was everything to the east of this main portion, this main facade here, okay? Phase 2 is renovation work to this section of the house, which is currently den, bathroom, little office. The exterior carport, which is non-conforming, will be converted to unconditioned space, closed off to the north, opened up to the south, be used as a kind of pool area, and the addition of a two-car conforming garage to the property. That was approved by staff hearing officer January 18th. So this is the extent of the design that we're looking at today. Okay, we've reviewed this in the past. It's essentially keeping the same design for the renovated portion that is existing and utilizing the garage to counterbalance the main, the master bedroom per your comments previously.
That sentence again, I didn't follow what you,
Well, if you recall, way back when, I think in the fall actually, one of the comments that you had was the slope of the roof and of this shed roof on the master bedroom. And we went back and we studied that. And one of the answers that we had to that was to revise the slope so that it was less steep. It was 3 and 12. We went to 1.5 and 12. And then also to introduce the same motif on the garage. But if you recall, we separated those out as 2 phases. And the last time we were in, we showed you what that looked like, but knowing we weren't really looking at that because it wasn't part of the same LUP. Now we're looking at this portion here. So the volume, look, and feel of this is because we wanted it to correspond to what's going over here. That wasn't a different phase. And I really apologize for that confusing description, but, you know, given that we had to phase to fast track it, that's what we ended up with. So let's get to some plans. So the area that is under review today is this den/dining room, where we are proposing to take out a few windows, add a few windows on the north so that we have some tall verticals that were existing, very vertical windows. We're going to be doing 3 horizontal windows to be in keeping with the overall design. Convert this portion from carport and then add this garage. Everything to the west of this has already been approved. Here's our existing conditions. Materials on this project are going to be identical to the one previous one. This is the correct board. Get you to some elevations. This is the garage over here that would be added. This is the main entry, the view from the north. These are the windows that would be added. I think I lost my mic here.
You good? No, I hear you.
As long as that green light's on,
did.
it should be working.
Oh,
Now it's on, yeah.
It's not the same one.
What are we looking at?
Back end, maybe. What page are you on now?
A2.01.
No, I don't have one.
No, right
Just
here.
keep going back one more.
There we go.
Oh, thank you.
Because there's the materials.
Yeah. Okay.
There you go.
May I ask a question?
Let's hold questions until he's finished. Go ahead.
These are existing elevations. Do we want to focus on these at all? Just keep going. On the south here, or in the west elevation, you can get a look at the overall design for that garage. This is the south elevation showing the existing den, the converted existing carport, and the garage beyond.
Big house.
Okay. All right. Is that it?
Yeah, I think so. We can just go with questions.
All right, well, we'll hold them right there.
Sure.
Okay. Before we go to questions of the board, is there anyone in the audience, or do we have any communications in the public that would like to speak to this project? Katie, do we have any correspondence?
No, Mr. Chair, we do not.
One in the audience? Seeing no one come forward, then the chair will close public comment, bring it back to the board for questions. Joe, you had a question.
I think we asked this before, I'm sure we did. Why did you separate it into 2?
Well,
Clarify.
I explained it last time, so maybe I should explain it exactly the same way. We were approved on the 18th, or in August, I don't know the exact date, but, and we couldn't get a hearing on the modification till actually the 18th of January. So to try and move the project along, the city agreed to let it, and this was because somebody at the city left?
Talk into your mic, please. Yeah, bring it up.
There
Bring
you
it
go.
up to you. Yeah. Bring it up to
I
you.
used to do this for a living. I should be able to handle a mic. In any case, the somebody at the city either went out on leave and so Betsy was backed up forever and ever and ever, and they agreed that it was unreasonable how long it was taking us.
That's good. Okay, good explanation. Nice. So you just drew a line right
It
there.
was
and-
absolutely not our desire.
Okay.
Okay, other questions? Yes, Lisa.
I'm looking at the square footages of both hybrid Bermuda and the Marathon Fescue and the explanations about the irrigation systems. And I'm wondering if, I don't know, I'm having trouble getting my head around how that's going to be at all water efficient, and wondering if my other.
Okay, my question to staff. What, is landscaping in front of us today, or did we circumvent the landscaping the last time?
If that's part of the second phase of the project.
So-
It says here on the
piece.
description,
What
new deck under.
There's a new garage, pool deck.
So the
Landscape.
project description that's on the agenda
Landscape
is-
alterations.
The project description that is on the agenda is the original revised project description. Once we've taken action on a project description, we can't revise it. So what's before you today is, I think you have a revised project description on the plan, so.
Okay,
that's what's
but
available.
are we going to review landscape today?
If it's
Or did we already review
I
that?
don't have one in front of me.
You reviewed that.
If it's on,
Well, it says landscape alterations on
So,
our,
yeah.
That's incorrect.
Yeah, what Katie just explained is that the project description has to remain the same, even though we've already reviewed all of that on December 28th. What I'm trying to clarify is, are we going back to review any additional changes to landscape in today's review that
It's-
we hadn't reviewed on the 28th?
It's only the landscaping, if there is any, that wasn't reviewed previously,
That is my
because
question.
you've already taken action on
All right.
previous.
So do we have some understanding of what we already took action on? Maybe you can share with us.
This is the same landscape plan that
Okay,
you reviewed
so-
earlier.
Theoretically, we've already given this landscape plan final approval.
Well, then can you show us what the landscape alterations are? Are there any landscape alterations
Well,
since the last approval?
I can,
None since the last approval.
correct.
Okay,
Okay.
Never
So
mind.
that- does that, okay, so that
Thank you.
clarifies it. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I just
Real-
had,
Go ahead. You showed us an elevation with some really high windows. Is that the garage that you're,
yeah, I saw that too.
that's on the other end of the house. That's the master bedroom.
that's the master bedroom?
That's the other, we already approved this piece. The part we're approving today is
There.
right there. That roof and those
What's
set of
behind?
doors and what's behind. And the other part that we're approving today is from here over. Okay? And if you go to this other,
This is, well, that's the master bedroom. What's that wall of the garage? That's the wall of the garage?
and that's the wall of the garage. So we're
Correct.
approving this piece of the elevation. That's the garage. This part we already approved in the last. And we're approving from here over today.
Okay.
We're
This
not
is the
approving, but
garage.
we're
This is
looking
the
at it.
garage here.
That's correct.
And the entrance to the garage is on the,
That's
over right
correct.
there.
Yep.
That's what you're seeing here.
That's correct.
So I have two questions. Go ahead. This one, I understand, is some sort of nano-wall element. What's happening here? Is that
It's open.
permanently open?
Open, yes.
So it's not enclosed?
Correct.
Okay. And then on the garage door, is that a solid garage door?
That is glass, opaque glass on the front.
Okay. All right, other questions? Any other questions? Okay, if not, we're going to go to comments. Based on the understanding, today we can either give it project design approval or not. We can give it project design approval with comments.
you can't give it final?
Or we can give it project design approval and final if we think the drawings are sufficient to represent final drawings. Or we can give it project approval with comments. We could also do a version of sending it to consent calendar. But, so there's a few options.
I'd just like to make a comment. I don't have the old set of plans in front of me. However, I'm looking at the last final approval submittal checklist that was submitted.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait. Never mind. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Denise, did you have a question?
Nope.
Okay.
Did we give them final?
We
Did you
gave them final approval on everything
final
else.
everything last time?
Everything except what we're looking at
Looking
today.
at now. So
And
we're
so
looking at
they're asking-
we're looking at drawings.
We have to determine whether we want to give it project design approval or not.
Yeah, gotcha.
Or we can give it project design approval with comments and then come back with changes. Or we can give it project design approval and final approval if we felt the drawings are sufficient. Or some other, there's probably some other versions of the process, but that's essentially. So, comments?
I would like to see if you can explain, if you can show us the finished drawings or what you would like to present to us and get us approval for this part that you're, I mean, if these are already, all that was already approved and the drawings were approved, show me what the drawings are for this part.
Yeah, sure.
Obviously, you probably have floor plans, and you have foundations, and you have structure.
Yep. 72%.
Let's do this first. These are structural drawings. We just received these after submitting this set to the county, but this is structural pertaining just to phase 2.
Okay.
We had phased that out as well. Foundation plan. Framing. Details. Further details. So the drawings have been developed at the same level as the prior design, or prior phase. Because it was dealt with as a holistic design, although phased out just legally.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So for example, this is the set that is phase 1 that you guys approved. This is the set for phase 2 that we're asking for approval. Same level of detail. Same thing goes with the elevations sections. Phase 1. Phase 2.
And that line is right.
Well, here's a match line for the drawings, but the line of demarcation is right here for phase 1 and 2.
Okay.
Yeah. RCPs for phase 1, phase 2.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Other comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I do. I'm a little uncomfortable with the size, scope, and scale of the garage, but I'm open to other comments about it.
Okay. If there are no other comments, then I'll move ahead.
I was just
Go
going to say
ahead.
with Brian, I don't really, I think there's so much glass already on the house, I wouldn't support a translucent glass garage door, especially a big, huge one.
A couple of comments. Brian, I tend to agree. The composition suffers, I think, if this garage is roughly the same height as this element, as the master bedroom. And I think the master bedroom plays a very important role in defining the house. And I think having this garage, particularly at that end of the house, and the thing that kind of gives it away for me, I think the composition suffers from it being too high. And I was looking at the garage doors. You know, sometimes folks want to have a high garage because they're going to store a high vehicle in it, et cetera. What was I looking for? I don't know. There was a sketch that shows somewhere. Yeah, there it is. It's the, you know, this little alleyway back here. You know, there's a home just to the left that kind of drops down. They have kind of an entry driveway. Their garage sits to the left as you turn in. This one's kind of dead in at the end of this little cul-de-sac. This is basically the end of this little lane. And then this thing. I think, you know, walking here and standing here and looking at the house and, you know, realizing that the hedge covers a lot of that and you can't see the whole composition itself. I think this gives, by having the height of this thing, gives much more importance to this garage than it probably should have in terms of the composition. And I think the composition would serve better if this was a little lower. In other words, the proportion of that to that and this to this to there might work a little better. It would drop that whole element down just a couple of feet. And there's apparently doesn't appear to be a need to have a high vehicle because the garage door is a standard garage door height. So, and I think that would also help from the neighbor that's just on the other side of that, on the east. So I think dropping that would really work a whole lot better in my view. I mean,
I agree.
I mean, the rest of the composition, I mean, the rest of the architecture stays the same, et cetera. And I tend to agree with going back to this little sketch about the translucent garage doors, because, you know, this garage door has some windows up high, et cetera. I believe the garage door to the as you go to the right.
This is directly across the street.
That's the one that sits down.
No, it's the back one.
Or is that back one?
It's back
Oh,
one.
that's the one over here.
You pass it about halfway past our lot.
I'm just uncomfortable with translucent garage doors, but I'll leave that up to other members of the board. Other comments?
I agree with the garage door height and mass being over scale for the project.
Other comments? No. Okay. If there is a majority of you all feel that that the height is too high, then you may want to include a motion to the effect that the general idea is okay, but they're going to need to come back to us with a redesign of the garage.
May I ask a question before we move to that point?
Yes.
About that issue? Two things put us at this height. First off, it was the original understanding from design input on this side that bracketing this thing with a symmetry/asymmetry feel was the right move. When we did that and had the shed of this roof slope this direction, hitting this is going to be a kind of a nightmare waterproof-wise if we lower that down any more than 2-3 inches. So if we do that, we're all of a sudden dropping that thing down to a level where it's no longer doing what we had all agreed it should be doing.
I don't know that we all agreed to that, and if you move it down, you'll have to move it below that. That's a geometry you'll have to get worked out.
That's right. And if we lower it down below that, then over the head of the
Then you'll
of
have
the
to
door,
work it out. You'll have to work it out. And we'll leave it up to the board.
We've studied that. That geometry just doesn't work.
You may have to find a better solution. I'll leave it up to the board. Somebody want to make a motion or further comment?
The only comment I have to say to that, and I understand your design desire, and I don't know if my comment helps or not, but what I've noticed in the original house was that was a different roof system where it just came across straight away. I don't know if that's something you want to do, but
That's originally what we had, and then you guys asked us to put a slope on it. So it is a bit confusing. It was originally designed as a flat roof over the garage.
I didn't say flat. It was a gable roof. What am I? Hold on, let me figure out what I'm saying here before I. on it. Where's the original elevations, the original house?
It's right behind these, actually.
There we go. But see how it just sort of, it's a flat roof carport. And you want to make it into an enclosed garage. Now you're changing this whole roof system to kind of match this, is that correct? Is that what you did?
No, this roof system here doesn't change. It'll be flat there.
I see.
What we're doing is we're matching what was done on the other side per guidance.
I see.
Let's go to the roof plan.
It's
So right now,
I see.
you have this piece of roof coming like that. And the challenge is the geometry engagement of this roof here, whoops, this roof here. So if he lowers the roof is what we're asking him to do, is that this roof then has to engage at a lower level. Oops, my microphone fell. Has to engage at a lower level. Okay, so the study that has to occur is the condition right here. Okay, and so what you have is you have a roof coming in like that, and you either have to make it engage below this roof, which is this piece, or you have to engage it above that, or you have to engage it right on it, and then it becomes a fairly complicated piece of geometry, and flashing and so forth and so on. I mean, it's doable, but it's more complicated. And you know, the easier solution would to let it drop below there, and can you let it drop low enough so that you still get your 7.0 garage door, you know, coming in this way. So that's the study that needs to occur. Now, the other thing is in this whole composition, you have a composition that essentially the argument is being made that we have a long house like this and we have a bedroom in that's like that, correct? Yeah, it's like this, okay?
Yeah.
And you have this set of roofs here. So the architect is saying, you know, look, I want to mirror this to this side.
Right.
And what we're saying, yes, we tend to agree with that, but we're saying this element is too high, particularly as it faces this east property owner. So the trick is to get this to lower either that shape or come up with a different roof configuration so that you're not playing symmetry. Make this drastically enough different from this element so that it doesn't read like it's kind of being symmetrical, but it's not. That's part of the challenge from a design standpoint. So the board can direct the architect to go back and make these studies, and come back to us with a different solution that reduces the bulk of this element. We're not really talking about the size, we're talking about the scale and bulk piece of it. The size of the garage is perfectly fine.
Right.
The size of the garage door is perfectly fine. So I think what I hear people saying is we're not comfortable with the bulk of this thing.
May I
Denise?
comment?
Yes.
So this is basically a single-story home.
Yes.
So it's only 15 feet.
Yes.
So I don't know, I tend to agree with the architect that I appreciate the symmetry of that, and it doesn't bother me like it bothers the rest of you, but again, it's a single-story home. They're not, going over any height limit, so I think it's just basically
And it doesn't have anything to do
an
with the height.
aesthetic decision.
If you go out to the site and go to that little house that's at the end, not the little house, but the house that's at the end, that garage sits right up on top of them. So I think what we're all concerned about is it just overpowering that end of the property, even though it's a one-story house. But you're in a whole little street of one-story houses and a lot of hedges.
We have a view of that in one of the pictures.
Okay,
How that looks.
Anyway, I'll leave it up.
Can we see the picture?
garage does the same thing.
Well, let's just look at this picture. I would appreciate it if we could get a little more clarity.
Correct, Dom? Is it in here?
It's that one right here, right?
There's another view.
This guy.
Here, is this it? Are we looking here? Okay, let me see. How's this? This is your house.
That's this guy. That's different.
Back to some more photos.
What page are you on, Dom, to see it? I'm trying to show them that, well, that's what I see. That's them.
Yeah, it's this guy. These set of
exactly the
photographs
same
right
thing.
here.
It's a shed.
Okay.
So it's a shed roof as well?
Yes, all we're saying, Denise, is that the
No, I know what
proportion
you're
of
saying.
this is, I think some of us are saying that the bulk of this is too big compared to that. See, that this one's, yes, it's the same size, same shape, but it's away from it, and
you're
it
also-
slopes away.
But you're also looking at it at a different angle. I mean,
Right,
it's that.
exactly. But if you're over in this yard, which I walked over here, and you look back that way, this is going to be.
Well, is there a lot of screening between the two homes?
There's going to be a dominant element.
So
Yeah,
they
it's like-
can't see it.
It's like 12-foot hedge.
So if it's a 12-foot hedge, I don't understand the problem. I mean, I'm sorry, but I just don't get it. You know, I think that
Well,
it's appropriate to the design personally.
You've had to go out to the site, but anyway. Okay, I'll leave it up to the board. Somebody want to make a motion? We can either give it project design approval, or project design approval and final approval.
Well,
or-
I have a couple of other questions before
Okay.
because, well, one thing I heard was that because this has come back and forth in different pieces, I think maybe, I mean, I know I'm a little bit confused, but I heard the owner say that we had given them direction to do what they did. So, but I don't remember that. And then I also wonder if we're worried about the neighbor. Did you show the plan to the neighbor, and did the neighbor have any feedback about it?
Actually, you can answer that because you have been most
Yeah,
contact with them.
the neighbor that, in the house that we're talking about that goes past ours. I'm sorry?
What's that?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
just next to
They
you.
don't live there.
Oh,
They live in Los Angeles. They're telling us we'll see them on weekends. I've talked to the lady numerous times. She's seen our project sign. So she didn't express any real interest, to be honest with you.
okay. All right, thank you.
If I could just make a suggestion about Bernie's comment on what your direction was, if you want to look back in the minutes of what your
That's a good idea.
motions were, it should have
Jeez.
comments on the direction for the
Oh,
shed
thank
roof.
you.
That would have been that 20, the one with the long list, I think.
Let's see, the board had positive comments regarding the project's consistency in appearance, neighborhood compatibility, quality of architecture, materials, and follows good neighbor guidelines. The board appreciates the changes the applicant has made. Restudy the exterior color, provide more toned down color, natural blend with the surrounding environment. Consider eliminating the window in the bathroom corner. The proposed landscape plan is acceptable. Restudy the proposed stonework in the north elevation and provide an alternative option at consent. The board would like verification that the FAR is no higher than 87% when the garage is added to the plans. That's it?
So it wasn't
That's a
clear.
good question,
So it
though.
wasn't clear.
What is the new FAR?
Oh, it's like 70-something.
Is that, but she said this was an old
86.
description.
86%?
86%.
Uh-huh, see, it
The
changed.
project one.
It actually changed
72.
down.
Yeah, well, okay.
Okay, so what's the pleasure of the board? Does someone want to make a motion?
Did we take care of those other things, the stonework and all
Yes,
that?
that all
We did
was- that
that,
was
so
all
we're
done.
just down to the,
We're down to just making a
Right.
decision on this piece of it.
So just to help, it's just that we raised concerns. It's not necessarily a valid, I mean, so whoever wants to make the motion, I mean, I'm
Right,
not
right.
stuck to saying I'm right at what I'm saying. I had a concern.
I'd like to make a motion
Okay?
to give this project, project design approval and final approval, because it looks like they have everything they need for final as well. And I'd like to make the following neighborhood preservation findings, that the consistency and appearance of the proposed development is consistent with the scenic character of the city, that the compatibility of the proposed development is compatible with the neighborhood in its size, bulk, and scale, and that quality architecture and materials has been expressed.
Okay, that's the motion on the floor. Is there a second to that motion? Hearing no second, the motion fails. May I have another motion?
I'll try it again. I move to continue the project in 2 weeks with the following comments. The board appreciates the style of the architecture, and the only comment I have is to possibly study the size, bulk, and scale and the roof configuration of the new garage. Otherwise, everything else is fine.
Okay, that's a motion on the floor. Is there a second to that motion? Okay, there is a second to the motion.
Under comments?
Yes.
I would not support that motion mainly because I want to see I want to see some different options for the garage door. There's too much glass.
The motion on the floor, Bernie, is to restudy and come back. So that's basically the motion. So we're going to see something when they come back. I don't know if that might be sufficient for you or not. Okay, that's the motion on the floor. Is there further comments to the motion that's been first and seconded? Hearing none, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? Okay, so 5.
Can we get guidance?
Favor and 1.
Let's not do this again. Let's not get to a certain
Okay? All right, so that's the motion on the floor. We'll see you back here.
Is there a maximum height that you would like to see for the?
It's not a question of maximum height. It's a question of proportions and.
Is there a proportion that you would like to see?
I think I offered you some solutions and sketches. You need to look at that. That's what's driving the board's level of comfort. Okay, that goes all over there.
Actually, I'll take the one.
Okay. Let's go to, this is a new item, so I'm going to take the time to read into the record the item description, project description. This is item number 220 Camino Alto. This is a proposal to construct, if the applicant and the owners can come forward. Yeah, just so you know, you folks are neighbors? Yes. Okay, and you want to have public comment?
Oh, I see.
Okay, the way this, let me just take a minute just to describe to you the way this works. The applicant will come forward, they'll present the project. This board has not seen this project at all until it's laid out in front of us here in a few minutes. So we're going to take the opportunity to have the project presented to us. Once that's completed, then I will call for public comment, at which time you'll have 2 minutes to address the board and present any information that you have concerning the project. And then at that time, we will close public comment, and then it comes back to the board. At that point, the board will ask questions. So we'll then go to comments, and then we will do some sort of action depending on what's in front of us. Okay? So that's in general how it works. Okay, if you'll introduce yourselves, please.
Good afternoon, Troy White with Dudecka Land Use Planner.
I'm Charles Travis with Chaz Architects.
Okay, welcome. I'm going to read the project description into the record. This is a proposal to construct a new 4,450 square foot, 2-story, single-family residence with an attached 562 square foot, 2-car garage to replace the previous single-family residence lost in the Tea Fire. The project also includes 232 square feet of a covered terrace, 450 square feet of rooftop terrace. Other site improvements include a new driveway and site landscaping. Grading outside the main building footprint will consist of 31 cubic yards. Grading under the main building will consist of 250 cubic yards, and 281 cubic yards of import will occur on the site. The proposed total of 5,694 square feet on a 1.3 acre lot of the Hillside Design District is 109% of the guideline maximum floor to lot area ratio. Any action may be taken if sufficient information is provided. So if you could please share with us what you're going to do.
Okay. I'll give you a brief introduction and then we'll head into the architecture. So Upper Riviera, located off of Las Alturas. It's on, just as you're going top of Las Alturas, it's the second house or lot on Camino Alto as you're heading down the mountain. So there was a loss in the T-fire in 2008. The property owner acquired the property in 2012. To 53% slope, so it's significant slopes. The house has 2 levels, and Charles will speak to that. But the design intent was for it to read like a single story from Camino Alto, and you'll see a little bit more about that. The project meets all setbacks, building height, and open yard requirements. So there's no mods that are being requested. And the FAR actually is a little less than that was, which was presented in there. It's actually at 97% of the recommended FAR. The calculations included errantly the terrace areas, and so a slight reduction relative to that. And with that, I'll turn over to Charles, and he can walk through the architecture.
Thank you.
Okay, if we could look at the second sheet. A survey of the existing conditions. One of our design goals was to keep the existing driveway, the existing approach to Camino Alto, and as well the existing retaining structures on the site. For a couple of reasons. I think one was to minimize site preparation and hopefully stabilize the site while we're under construction. As well, the existing perimeter beam and piers are not intended to be demolished. We're going to try to work around those as much as possible. Let's go to the second sheet. This is the site plan with the proposed footprint. As you can see, the existing driveways, existing drive and retaining walls are in place. We're also showing in shaded areas the open yards to the north of the property footprint, and then up above in the roof terrace. There's a pepper tree just to the north of the footprint that is being noted as being removed. This is the floor plan under drawing number 1. The owner's desire was to have a single-level living for the kitchen, dining spaces, as well as the master bedroom, which this plan shows. The garage is stepped down approximately 3 feet, just for grading reasons on the site. Drawing number 2 is the lower level of the house, which would consist of 2 guest rooms, a study, and then a French door leading to a covered terrace. Drawing number 3 is the roof terrace above the garage. It's partially covered and partially open. The covered area is more about massing on the front of the house and hoping to give the owner a little bit of privacy from the street. Drawing number 4 is a roof plan showing how the mass is broken up into components. The proposed roof pitch is 3 and 12, and it will be a 2-piece clay tile roof. These are the preliminary exterior elevations. Drawing number 1 is the front elevation, which would be seen from the street. It will be color integral stucco, some sort of a white shade, As I mentioned, clay tile roof, two-piece, bronze-colored, aluminum-clad wood windows, wood garage doors, plank wood, and the exterior doors are proposed to be steel with insulated glass. As you'll see with these drawings, we're showing natural grade. These are the three building sections, starting with building section A. It's cut through the master suite and master walk-in closet with the guest rooms below. These sections show the existing driveway and retaining walls at the street as well. Section B is through the entry, which steps down to the living room, guest rooms below, and the same existing drive and retaining walls at the street level. And section C is cut through the garage and also the upper terrace, which shows the balcony and the roof section of the outdoor room.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay. All right, we do have a public speaker. Katie, did we get any written? We have two public speakers. Did we get any? Okay, so we get 4 minutes.
No, Mr. Chair,
No,
although I do believe the public speaker has a written comment.
Okay, they'll provide that, okay. All right, we have no written comment ahead, but we do have two public speakers.
We actually, she just handed us.
Well, that'll be part of what they're presenting, that's what you
Okay.
just said. Okay, so I guess whichever one you'd like to go first, if you can come up and speak into this microphone, right there, thank you. And you have 4 minutes, because I think your wife gave you the time.
Basically, we have no really problems with the project, except that there has been, the lot was sold in 2001 or I think, or 2013, and there was a property line that has been kind of confusing. Over the years, the markets have changed to do movement of the land, but it was requested that a new survey be made, and the surveyor came and surveyed the line, and our lawyer sent a copy of the survey, which was, by the way, requested by Mr. Hurd, and we sent him a copy, and he never signed it or sent it back to the lawyer. So our request is simply that before the project begins, that we settle the property line once and for all, because over the year, we've been there 42 years, and that line has never really properly been described, but now it is, and we need a finalized record of that. So I would like to have accepted that line, property line. The second, we would like to have some height poles put in prior to construction so that we have an idea of the height and the views and how it would affect our views. I don't think there's a problem, but we would like to have it anyway. And the third request, the concern that we have, Camino Alto is a very narrow street, very small and somewhat curvy. And in previous constructions, there was a problem with parking, people parking. Our house is right on the road, and we would like to find some way that we can diminish or the traffic and somehow the parking problem situation. Because if a large truck comes in, the traffic is blocked, basically. So the traffic and the parking problem is one. And lastly, we would like to have a timeline of when the construction is going to begin and when it's supposed to be end. And that's about it. As far as the architecture itself, we have no comments about it. The house looks to be a beautiful house and will be fine. But the lots, permanence, or the acceptance of the lot line, we would like that to be finalized and recorded prior to the construction. That's about it.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anyone else in the public wishing to address the board? Would you like to address the board?
Yes, my name is Wayne
Okay,
Smith.
you need to come up and sit down, please. And you're going to need to, at some point, to fill out a yellow slip.
Okay.
If you will introduce, you have 2 minutes to address the board.
Thank you. My name is Wayne Smith. I live at 40 Camino Alto. I just looked at the plans today, and so far, I don't see any issues with them. But I do echo the comments of my neighbor in terms of the things that she's asked for, and I would support that entirely.
Okay. And just for our reference, 40 Camino Alto is with
40 Camino Alto, if you...
Race into the house here.
Okay.
Is it down that way?
It's down this way. This is
Downslope,
30,
okay.
and then 40's here, and ends up.
Okay, great. Thank you.
These lot lines were never,
Okay.
I mean, we had some big issues when we bought our house, so we had to go back and forth, so the lot lines need to be clarified.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anyone else? If not, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the board. Before we go to the board for questions, with regards to, I want to respond to the public speakers, some of their comments. With regards to the lot lines, that is not a subject that this board has purview over. That is a subject that has to be sorted out between you and the adjacent owners, and then that will be defined as it goes through the building and city building department approval. So if you need some assistance on that, you can go to staff. But where the lots are and the lot lines, et cetera, is not something that this board reviews. We have to take what's being presented right now. We have in front of us a survey that's dated March 2015. It was first done in June of 2012. So we have to take that as indication that the lot as being described is appropriate. There are other people that look at that, and that's not the subject of this board. With regards to story poles, that's a decision under our circumstances, since this project does not have to go to the Planning Commission. That will be a decision this board will make in its process. We probably will not make that until we get to a point of determining whether or not we're ready to give this project design approval. At that point, the board can take one of 3 actions in the types of story poles that are required. And that's outlined in our guidelines, and those are online, or you can check with staff. They can share with you what the story pole guidelines are. With regards to construction traffic and parking, and we understand where you're coming from, we see this all the time on the Riviera. This board can ask that the staff in the building department consider traffic limitations, parking limitations, but again, that's not a decision this board can make. That's not our purview, but we can request staff to have the building department, when they issue the building permit, to provide some guidance. In terms of the timeline is at this point wide open because the applicant has to go through the review of this board for approval. That we have no idea, depending on what action this board takes. We have to do basically 2 large actions. We have to be able to give it project design approval. Once we do that, that approval is subject to a 10-day appeal period. So anyone in the community, any neighbor can appeal our decision. That appeal would go directly to the city council. There is a cost involved, there is a time frame involved. If we give it project design approval, that means that they then can go off and prepare final working drawings. That comes back to this board for our final review. At that point, we give it another decision whether to accept it as final or not. That also has a 10-day appeal period. That gets appealed directly to the city council. Once that's completed, then the applicant has to file all of the drawings with the building department. They have to have the fire department check it, and in this case, just looking at what's been presented, they have a storm water management level of work plan that has to be submitted. That has to be reviewed. There may be public works issues that have to be reviewed. There's several reviews that have to go on. That proceeds through that process. They then have to go to the building department. That's a whole review process that takes several months or weeks. And at that point, then the city of Santa Barbara issues a building permit. As I understand it, those building permits are good for a year and a half, I think. Maybe a year, I'm not sure. In which case, that's the time frame they have to execute the project. However, in many cases, they can ask for an extension. So that's subject to the building department. Again, that's not a decision this board is allowed to make. That's not in our purview. We're here primarily to look at the architecture, the suitability of the project to the site, and the suitability of the overall design of the project to the neighborhood. That's the purview that we're obligated to review. So I hope that helps you understand what's going to happen as we move forward. So having done that, the chair will close public comment, bring it back to the board for questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
Looking at the elevation sheet on a couple of the larger stucco walls, the east elevation, and then the rear elevation, I'm wondering if you're planning on doing any landscape to mitigate
Yes.
some of those wall spaces?
Yes, we are.
Other questions?
Yeah, your plate heights?
I have to look at the drawings. It's been a couple of weeks. Can I borrow a scale?
It's pretty tall.
Master bedroom is 9 feet. Living room is 10.6. Garage is 9 feet.
What's the basement or the lower level?
10 feet, sorry.
10 feet.
These are 10 feet. So there's a floor line in here somewhere.
Yes.
Okay, so the way I usually show it is like that.
Right.
And then you get a dimension. That's real helpful. Okay, other questions? Okay. I do have some questions about the site. I was up there today. And I noticed standing right here, there's a whole series of railroad ties that cascade down this drop-off here. Are those remaining? What's the game plan?
I think those will remain.
And are they retaining, or are they there for some other reason? Do you know?
I do not know.
Okay. And then trying to look down into this is really overgrown at this point. So I can't tell, is that really open space, or is this just a sloping part of the canyon? Can you really get down there?
I think the only way to get down would be from here.
Okay. So Katie, question as this goes through the process, I'm not sure how, we've been given a lot of definitions, particularly with this NZO business, about open, the 1250 and all of that monkey business.
It's allowed to have trees as long as it's open to the sky.
Do you have to show a way to get to it from the house? Is that part of the review?
I don't know. I'd have to consult with staff. I don't know.
Yeah, if you go out to the site, you can see why I'm asking the question. It's way down there, so I'm trying to figure out how do they get to it.
And I'd be happy to speak to that as well.
Okay, yes.
So the site is quite sloped, and I've met with counter staff to discuss this very specific issue. And so basically, when you have a sloped lot like we do have, the solution is to provide something with 2% slope or less, and it has to have a certain minimum dimension of, I don't know, 12 by 20. It has to be, I think, like 500 square feet, something, or some minimum dimension. So ultimately, we're achieving that with an upper level deck in terms of an open space that's actually usable
on top of the garage.
On top of the garage, and then this is meeting the balance. It's open space, but whether or not it would actually ever be used.
Okay, that answers my question. Okay, thank you. Okay, other questions? Okay, if not, let's go to comments.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have comments. I think the design is beautiful. I think it's perfect for our community, but I believe the size is a little too large for this area. I'm particularly uncomfortable with the rear elevation. Oh, shoot. It just seems sorry. I just,
This guy?
yeah, and I was looking at our guidelines, and there's some issues like because you've got a disadvantage because you're on a slope, that somehow there needs to be a mitigation of the bulk of the elevation, in particular in that regard. Some of the options are lowering your plate heights, reducing the overall size of the houses in some of the rooms, just to reduce the overall size. This is a big negative. I think there needs to be some kind of study about that, maybe, because that's just a huge 30-foot high wall there. So in our guidelines, it kind of points to how to, flow with the slope of the existing terrain. But those are my comments.
Okay, other comments?
Yeah, I agree with Brian completely about that. I think that 30-foot height on the west elevation is pretty much unacceptable. It's kind of what this board was designed to do, was to look at that, since we had many homes up on the mesa here that did this, and it became quite controversial.
So what this elevation, Denise?
It's the west
Oh,
elevation.
this one, okay.
So that you can see right there off that terrace, it's just
Thank
it's
you.
a huge, huge wall right there.
Is this the back of the garage? Is that
Yeah.
what that is? Set up way up. The garage is at, the garage is at this level down here.
Right.
We have approved a couple of houses up on this street. In fact, we approved the house that's just below that. This board approved some time ago. Okay?
Why did we do-
Excuse me, this is the conversation is to the board, thank you. Because this is being aired and it gets confusing for the public. So we have reviewed some houses. I mean, this board, I don't know that I was here when that house was reviewed, but we did approve it. But the other thing that was kind of interesting, if you go stand up in this driveway and you start looking at, you got a aerial photograph. There you go. Thank you. One of the dilemmas in my mind, and I hear what you all saying about the size of this thing. But one of my dilemmas is we're supposed to look at it in terms of compatibility with the neighborhood.
Yes.
Okay? So the fact is, we have a whole bunch of large houses down here that may have been approved by this board, they may have been approved by ABR, I don't know. But they look to be very large when you're standing here looking at them across the canyon.
Yeah.
And they're relatively close.
Yeah, I
So-
noticed that.
So these are really big. So they're not much different than this big house.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, this is a big house
Yep.
at 5,000, whatever it is, square
Yep.
feet. Okay? And so that's, in my mind, that's kind of presents a dilemma. I mean, I understand on the Mesa where we got another different kind of challenge. So then you have this home that sits right up on the street in a very traditional George Washington Smith fashion, kind of like we see several homes in Montecito are built that way. They're kind of right up on the street, and it's the same Spanish architecture, et cetera. And so are some of these are Spanish, Mediterranean, whatever. So in a way, and then we have a big house down here that I don't think any of our boards would have ever approved, but what do I know? And so I'm at a dilemma. This is almost one of these projects where, and I'm getting back to Denise's concern, where I'd want to take the whole thing and just suck it up. In other words, just squeeze it down. And what I was looking at was, when it was being presented, was the square footage. And part of the problem when you have these kind of drawings, they don't show furniture layouts, et cetera. So, but you have a 20-foot by 18-foot master bedroom. You've got a grand living room that's dining that's 36 feet by 22 feet, et cetera, et cetera. It's almost like, okay, you can have all these functions, but just get this whole thing squeezed down. And that then might help your guys' concern about the height thing. And I think a big part of this is going to be the landscaping.
Yeah.
And you can't landscape, probably, it's not practical to landscape the whole hillside, which is making up most of the acreage, because it drops straight down. But it's the immediate landscaping around this house, I think, that's going to make a big difference. Denise, you-
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
But if you also look at this is a good,
Yeah, and that's why These houses up there were probably used as this drawing.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Denise, yes.
Yes, well, I think that this area, is an area of large homes, and it's got big lots. I mean, it
Right.
can be, I'm not so as concerned about the size, although I do think there is plenty of room to make it smaller. I'm more concerned about the fact that it doesn't follow the lay of the land, that it doesn't terrace down.
It's not cascading.
It's not cascading, and that would really mitigate it as far as how high it looks and how massive it looks. It's the size, bulk, and scale, the bulk and the scale that really are the bugaboo for me. It's if this west elevation and the rear elevation, if this could somehow drop down the hillside, I think it wouldn't be that big of an issue about the size of the house, because I think it is kind of an area where it's luxury homes. There are a few areas like that where we do tend to bend the FAR a little bit, perhaps not as much as this is now, but it can become a little more lenient if it's a really good design and it's taken the land into consideration, excuse me.
I think you hit us in the face with these two really high, and you have a lot of arches. I mean, if you could put something that make that.
Look at, one of the things I always like to look at, assuming there's a floor line in here somewhere, that there's a 6-foot-high person.
Garage is, what, 3 feet below that?
Yeah, it's hard to tell, because that says it's the floor line, maybe it's higher, I don't know. If it is, it's up here. So.
Floor line is 23 feet below that ridge
Yeah.
right there. 23
exactly.
down from that.
From there. So, the scale of this thing gets really big. The challenge they have at trying to terrace this thing is they got a really dropping lot. So, it's one thing to if you have a lot that's like this, or excuse me, a lot that's like that, then terracing down, and we've seen some houses like that where that's kind of worked. We had one just recently in Montecito that was kind of like that. Here, we've got a lot that's dropping almost like that. So to terrace down is a big challenge. But I'm not saying it can't be done.
Well, I'll keep in mind too, he has 9-foot, 10-foot-6 ceilings, maybe
Plates,
the
exactly,
plate height,
exactly.
so the basement could be lowered.
One of the things that's interesting about the George Washington Smith houses, and it may be, and I have never been in the house next to this house, his ceiling heights were done like they do in Spain, because they had a bunch of short people. They're really, they're down at 8 feet. They're down at 7'6". The typical trick they would do is they would do a 7'6" plate height, and then use a little bit of roof, and then they would put the second floor, and that would be, or they might do this one at 8 feet. That would be 7'6", and then they come around, and then all of a sudden on one side of the house, usually to the inside garden or wherever it is, that would be 9 or 10 feet, but you wouldn't see that from the street. Now, that's different than the house right next to this house, that has a flat relationship to Camino Alto, okay? And there's a front door entry and a little balcony and what have you right there. But I bet you that those aren't 10-foot high plate heights. I think that whole house is small. So I think there's a way to do this. It's just not there yet, based on what I think you have.
I think you've got lots of opportunity
Yeah,
to
it's
explore those possibilities.
Beautiful design, though. I love the front elevation. It's gorgeous.
Thank you. It's just the proportions. Any other comments? Okay. No other comments. Okay. We're going to go for a motion here in a minute, but I'll go to now the applicant. Yes, go ahead.
I was just going to say one of the design elements we did consider early on is maybe cantilevering or pushing back this lower level, creating a shadow line on this elevation. And then perhaps incorporating a raised planting terrace, maybe in Santa Barbara stone, just to break up the verticality.
Yeah, that might
in
help
both
it.
this element and this element.
That might help it. I think if you come back, that and a combination of some concept, landscape, not a, doesn't have to be detailed, but some idea, and then being able to share with us on this drawing what those landscape elements might look like.
Absolutely.
That helps. It's a composition of the architecture and the landscaping. that ultimately is kind of what we have to be able to look at. And that kind of helps your argument, I think.
Still, Mr. Chair, I want them to consider what's already been said too
Right.
about the massing.
Okay.
And I also just wanted to remind everybody that, remember, some of those T-Fire homes were just approved right over the counter. We never even looked at the stuff. A lot of
Well,
them.
it was done at a consent calendar level, so only two
Right.
people look at it. So, at any rate, I would encourage whoever makes a motion to be fairly specific to give guidance to the architect and the designer of how to proceed. So if you want to make a motion.
I'll make the motion.
If you can make a motion just with comments, to have them come back, you can, if you want to, you can project design approval, it's up to you.
I'm going to make a motion with following comments right now, just so I can give you some room to be creative. We'd like you to continue the project to the full board with the following comments. The board appreciates the style and quality of the architecture. The board would suggest reducing the overall square footage, perhaps, and also to study lowering the plate heights in terms of how it is in relationship to the existing topography. The board appreciates the suggestion by the design architect of possibly adding some native stone features in the west and rear elevations. And that's my motion.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay. Is there further discussion to the motion? I would suggest to the maker of the motion we might include an additional couple of descriptions. One is that we would encourage the architect to study the possibility of cascading some of the architectural elements and or creating deep shadow lines, and that the architect also, when he returns, to bring a preliminary landscape plan in relationship to how the house sits on the site.
Sure.
Is that acceptable to the seconder?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
By the way, you can make a motion. We realize that. I forgot about that.
Further discussion? Okay. Hearing no further discussion, the chair will call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Okay, we'll see you back here. You can schedule with staff. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Is there any other business before today's board? Hearing no other business, the chair shall adjourn.
So.
February 6th.